Dollar Wednesday, Kim and I's favorite day of the week, right? This week, we're doing something that we've got tons and tons and tons of questions of, and that's Amazon VAT. This seems to be the most complicated part of selling in Europe for all of our audience. So this week, we're really happy to have on Christoph. Christoph, what's up? How's it going?
Hi guys, hi from Austria.
We're very excited to have you. Like I said, like our audience has tons and tons of questions. Even since like episode 1, when we're like just thinking about a product, they're like, wait, what about that? We're like, we're not worrying about that. Yeah, we'll bring on Christoph later. Yeah, so we have a great show today. Christoph, Kim, and I have been talking a lot about this subject. We've been going back and forth to make sure this is presented in a very clear and easy way for Amazon sellers to understand. We're going to try to give you everything that Amazon sellers need to know about Amazon and VAT. And nothing more not to complicate you. But before we begin, Kim, if they haven't seen the $1 Million Case Study, what the heck are we doing?
Okay, so we are finding and launching products to sell on Amazon. We have a huge target to raise $1 million worth of revenue, and we're giving all of the profits of that to a really nice charity called Pencils of Promise. And the best part is we are documenting every step of the way so you can follow along and learn from our successes, our mistakes, and hopefully build your own business too.
And everyone's telling us this is the undisputed best resource on the web for learning how to sell on Amazon. So you're going to want to make sure to follow along with the entire series. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button below or the like button if you're following along on Facebook. And with that being said, I think it's time to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. So this is session number 6. We're talking about VAT in Europe and setting up your business. But just quick recap of what we've done so far. We did session 1 and 2 on learning how to find a product to sell on Amazon. So we used Jungle Scout. We narrowed it down from a whole bunch of ideas to a few that were going to be profitable. We did supplier outreach and talked about picking our supplier in sessions 3 and 4. Session 5, we nailed down the specifics of what we wanted Kim's sleeping bag exactly to look like. And today we're talking about Amazon VAT. It's, like I said, everyone's favorite thing to ask questions about. So hopefully by the end of this, you won't have any more questions. So Kim and I, we know nothing about Amazon VAT. So we brought on Christoph. So Christoph is an Amazon VAT and pan-European expert. He's the co-founder of FBA Hero, which is a VAT automation software. And we couldn't think of anyone better to bring on for this particular topic to help us make sense of this and explain it in an easy to learn type way. So that being said, Christoph, do you want to tell us a little bit more just about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Christoph. I'm 24 years old. I'm living here in Austria. And as you said already, with FBA Hero, we are actually providing those kind of services. So it's my daily business to help Amazon sellers all over the world to establish or expand their business within Europe. So I think, as you said already, we will make it really simple, or as simple as possible, as simple as VAT can get. And let's start with the first slides. Let me show.
Fantastic. Sounds good.
Okay, so I guess the first thing is like, what is VAT and how does it work? Then how and when to apply for a VAT number. Then we talk a little about the storage options at Amazon, not too much because that's really an own topic. Then we talk about registration and filings, like what is the things you have to think about, what you have to look at. And then we will talk in particular a little bit about import VAT, because most of the viewers of today's webinar, I think they will be importing from China or from outside of Europe. So therefore, we will go through this topic, and then we will talk a little about the most frequently asked questions we collected over the last webinars and what. Yeah, so.
Fantastic. It's a good schedule. Even though VAT can be a boring thing, I know our audience is happy to see that. So, right on.
Right. As fun as possible.
Fantastic.
Okay, so VAT, as simple as it's written here, it's the so-called value-added tax. It's actually a tax that is paid by the consumer, but it's collected by you, by the seller. Okay. So with that being said, you also see that it's actually not a tax for you as a business, because you have your business taxes and all of the other things. It's actually a tax, it's a consumption tax. So it's a tax for the consumer himself. The first thing, which is clearly the most important one, is like, how do I actually calculate my VAT? Okay. I guess most of the people are aware about the VAT rates. On average, you can say the VAT rate in Europe is about 20%. Okay, so 20% on the sales price is actually VAT on every single product here in Europe. There are some exceptions to that. We will talk about this later on, but on average, it's 20%. Okay, and yeah, when we take a very simple example, and most people know about this, you know, like how is it calculated? If you look at the production and the shipping costs of a product, okay, within, let's say those are at €5, you know. In this case, we say, okay, it's €5 production and shipping costs. Then we have our Amazon fees, you know, overall the fees, commission, as well as FBA fees, and we have a great margin of €10 in that case, okay? So then you would see the sales price, the net sales price would be at €20. And what I always recommend when you're doing your calculations, make sure to do them as simple as possible, as I just showed you, you know. So from the production shipping to the sales price, to the net sales price, there is no VAT included at all. It has nothing to do VAT. So please, while you're doing your calculations, just do them as you did them in the US, okay? I think that's a very good tip, because sometimes are people mixing up, like, what if I add here the VAT and import VAT and whatever. And I think that is too complex. So the easiest thing is to really make a simple calculation of all of those net costs, net expenses, and your margin. And then when you got to your price, which is €20 in that case, you will be adding, for example, the 20% UK VAT. So as you can see here, it's just 20 multiplied with 1.2, it's €24. And that's the price the consumer is paying for your product, which means 4 out of those 24 are actually going to the government. So they will be paid by the consumer, but you are the one collecting it and passing it over to the government. Okay? I guess
Great. I like how you simplify that, because that's, you know, like, I think a lot of people can make this very complicated, but I like it.
Yeah, I think there, as I said, you know, you can make VAT very, very complex, you know, and I try to make it as basic as possible, because we don't need to talk about things that are not really affecting you, right? So we will not look at it from an accountant's view. We will look at it from a seller's view.
Perfect.
Yeah, my last sentence here on this slide is like, VAT paid to suppliers and customers is deductible, which means whenever you're paying VAT on that, you know, on that way, you know, for example, import VAT, it is deductible. So you will never pay VAT twice on the same transaction. But we will talk about that later on, just that you're aware. Okay, so I guess now you know how to calculate VAT. One thing that is important for every Amazon seller, you know, the price that you're adding in Seller Central is actually the sales price VAT inclusive. So Amazon does not add any information themselves. It's really the same price you're adding. So in our example here, the €24, this is the amount you have to add in Seller Central. Otherwise, you would have a very low price compared to your competitors, okay? So that's what you see in this screenshot here as well. It's written in German, actually. Sorry for this screenshot. But it basically says that the price is VAT inclusive.
Great.
Okay. So now let's come to, I think, one of the main questions, like, when do I actually need to have a VAT number, and meaning I have to pay VAT, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a US seller, a European seller, or whoever, you know, the rules are the same for everybody, okay? And there are basically only 2 rules you have to keep in mind. You need a VAT number when you're either storing in a country, like in the UK or whatever warehouse you're using, right? Or you're passing the distance selling threshold limit, okay? Storing in a country, as simple as it is, you're going to the UK, you're using an Amazon UK FBA warehouse. Because of that, you need to get a UK VAT number from the first day of storage. Or let's take it a little further. You're still storing in the UK, you got your UK VAT number, and now you're selling to German clients, which is fine because you can sell to anybody in the world. You don't have to limit your listing to the UK only just because you're storing in the UK. It just means that your goods are sent from the UK, and this is VAT effective. But you can publish your listing on Amazon Germany, and people from Germany can buy your products, and it will get shipped from the UK. And then the rule B. It comes to the distance selling threshold. The distance selling threshold is different from country to country. It's a certain limit of turnover you're doing in that country. So for example, the German threshold is 100,000 euros. It's quite a high turnover to compare to other countries, but it's actually one of the highest in Europe. So if you're selling more than 100,000 euros from your UK warehouse or any other warehouse around Germany to customers in Germany, then the German government is telling, hey, now you're selling that much to our consumers, to our inhabitants. Now you need to get registered in Germany as well, even though you are not storing in Germany, right?
So this would be on a calendar basis or a rolling 12-month basis, or
no, calendar basis. So January.
Okay. So we're going to ship our products into the UK. So from, the year of, this year is almost over. So let's just say 2018, if we only sell $80,000 to German customers, then we don't need to register for a VAT number or remit VAT to Germany. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. You would pay all
Perfect.
those VAT for those 80,000 euros to the UK.
Oh, okay.
So it
Gotcha.
wouldn't be VAT free. It would just be paid in another country. So this is really about when do I need to get a VAT number, which is always the implication, which is always the implication for paying VAT to that country.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Okay. So now you know when do you need to get a VAT number. There are tons of other rules about events and whatever things, but this is not important for an Amazon seller. So as long as you're not planning to build a real business with employees in Europe, you can keep those rules in mind. So the next question might be how to get a VAT number as a seller. So probably let's stick to that example with the UK. You decided for storing your goods in the UK because that's one of your main markets probably, and now it's about to getting this VAT number. And there are two ways to get a VAT number in any European country. Either by founding a company, local business, or by using a fiscal agent or fiscal representative. Founding a company has a lot of disadvantages and one little advantage. The disadvantages are that you have to do all the bookkeeping, all your annual reportings, you have to pay company taxes. So basically everything as any other business has to do, right? So this is something I would never recommend for a US seller who has an established business in the US, okay? Because founding a company, it's like founding a company, right? It's something you just don't do within a minute, within a second. And on the other hand, you would need a UK bank account to use for that company. And getting a UK bank account is a story on its own. So it's not what I would recommend. The second option, using a fiscal agent, is probably the simplest and the best option you can have. A fiscal agent or representative is basically just someone who is representing your company, your US company, in Europe, so that the government has somebody they can talk to in their language and they don't have to write those people. UK and US is probably and still not a problem to communicate with. But imagine you're a Chinese seller and the government would need to communicate with you in Chinese. This doesn't work. That's why they say, okay, we need somebody who is representing that company in Europe. The only requirement for using a fiscal agent, and the only reason I would not recommend a fiscal agent in some cases, is, as I said before, you would need an existing company. So if you're just starting out and you decide, hey, I want to start in the UK only, for example, then it would make sense to found your company directly in Europe and not founding a company in the US and then going to Europe with a fiscal agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all that makes sense. Perfect.
Okay, so that's the way to get a VAT number. Well, we will come to that later on anyway again. Just those are the very basic rules. So once you know how to get a VAT number and when do you need to get a VAT number, one of the main decisions you have to take up front is like, what are my storage options? So what is the country I'm storing in, or what are the countries I'm storing in? And Amazon in Europe is offering 3 different options: the so-called EFN option, the CE option, and the pan-EU option. Okay, EFN is the simplest and the easiest way of storing. It's just storing in one country, so like the UK. As you can see here on marketplaces, you can still sell to all marketplaces, even though you're just storing in the UK, and that probably might be the best fit for just starting out, you know, because you only need one VAT number. In that case, you can still sell to all marketplaces. You just have to translate your products and publish them. That's it, you know. So it would always make sense to publish your listing on all the 5 marketplaces. Otherwise, you exclude a big group of customers, of potential customers. So EFN storage is the option number 1. Clearly, that the shipping fees are also the highest. Because if you're sending something from the UK to, let's say, a customer in Spain, Amazon has higher fees, higher postal fees, and therefore you have higher fees as well. The second option is the CE option. That's the option for Germany, Poland, and Czech Republic. So Amazon built warehouses in Poland and Czech Republic, you know, because it's just cheaper to build warehouses in those countries because of labor costs. And so they said, okay, anybody who is storing his goods in Germany should also store his goods in Poland and Czech Republic, okay? And in order to force people to do that, they said, if you don't do this, you have to pay 50 cents more on every shipment. So it's like a penalty fee, okay? And so this came out last year. And at the moment, a lot of German sellers are going to, or a lot of sellers, let's say, that are storing in Germany are now also storing in Poland and Czech Republic, because they say, hey, paying 50 cents on every shipment might be much more, especially when the product total sales price is quite low, than getting a VAT number in Poland and Czech Republic. So this is option number 2. And option number 3, which is the biggest option at Amazon, and this is something you can compare to the US, it's the so-called pan-EU program. Amazon has currently warehouses in 7 European countries. And by clicking or enabling pan-EU, you simply allow Amazon to store in whatever country they think it's right. And that's something you're actually used to from the US, because Amazon is also in the US, they are telling you, move your inventory to New York. And when they see, oh, probably somebody from LA will buy a product soon, they are moving the inventory internally. And that's the same that Amazon does here in Europe. They are moving the goods around internally for free, and you will always pay the lowest shipping fees, and you will be always at the closest to the customer. And therefore, your bestseller rank and everything else will be at the highest. You know, the conversion rate is the best, okay? So if you are, for example, if you're fighting for the buy box in some cases, it would be that you would be preferred, because Amazon has the lowest fees, and therefore you will be preferred against somebody else.
So Christoph, do you recommend Pan-European? Are you a fan of it? Like, would you recommend that we do that?
I would recommend starting with EFN if you're really just starting out. If you got
Okay.
a big business in the US and you see that you will be doing a lot of money in Europe because there is no reason against it, then probably it would make sense to start with Pan-EU right away, because probably you will hit all those distance selling limits within the first half year, right?
Okay. So like, I guess, is there an option? So what about if I choose to send my product to the UK and Germany? I guess if I send to Germany, then I might as well send it in to Poland and Czech Republic too? Or
Exactly. In that case, and that's a little of a problem, that would be like 2 times EFN. You would be sending your goods to the UK yourself and to Germany, right? So Amazon is not distributing it internally for free. And as you're storing in Germany, Amazon would probably tell you or force you to store in Poland and Czech Republic. So at the end, you got 4 VAT numbers.
and at that point, I should probably just do Pan-European, would you say?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably yes. So if you're seeing that sales are going great in Germany, then I would rather decide for either starting in Germany directly, doing Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, and sending your inventory, sending the goods to consumers in the UK if they are just buying them, or you go from storing in the UK, and if sales are doing great, then you switch over to Pan-EU.
Cool.
Great. No, you just answered the question I was about to ask.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right. Can I ask you one more question, Christoph? This isn't exactly in your area of expertise, but I bet you know the answer. So what about, like, when we're creating our packaging, do we need to be thinking about putting, like all these different languages on our packaging, like English, German, French, Spanish, Italian, whatever?
I would recommend it.
Okay. Or like, what do like most sellers do? Like, on the back they have like the 7 different languages, or you choose like the most popular ones, or what? Or does Amazon have requirements? Or
no, there are some products that have requirements. As you're selling a sleeping bag, I guess there is not a real requirement, but it's different if you're selling any food products or supplements or something like this, because there are some legal requirements. But honestly, from a customer's perspective, from a brand building perspective, I would do it in different languages, because every customer is happy reading his instructions in German rather than in English.
right. Okay. So maybe at least like we're thinking about, like, for our sleeping bag, maybe at least like the more important stuff, like what temperatures it works for, maybe like a little bit of technical information. Maybe we could put all that in all the respective different EU languages.
Exactly, yeah. But
Okay.
in this case, I would definitely recommend still having one packaging, right? It doesn't make sense to have a German packaging and then an English packaging as well.
Right. That's what we're thinking. That would get a little complicated. So,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, no problem. Okay, so let's move over to the next topic. So VAT registration and filings, how does it actually really work, okay? So a VAT registration itself, it's a lot of paperwork, just that you are aware, but it's not really that complex. So it takes about 2 months to get a VAT number. As you can see, governments are slow in Europe as well. And you will need a lot of business documents, passport copies, forms to sign, whatever, a lot of paperwork, okay? However, you can start selling and storing from the validity date. So a validity date is the date from when the number is valid. So the government, that's actually a very good idea by the government. They said something like, it doesn't matter how long it takes us to get this number. It can probably even take us 3 months, but we give you a validity date so you don't depend on us. You don't depend on our slowness, let's say, right? So you can decide saying, okay, I want to start from the 1st of October, and then you can start selling and you can start storing from the 1st of October. And from the moment you get your physical VAT number 2 months after, we have to do, or we or you, whoever, has to do the VAT returns. And the VAT returns, they are then starting from the 1st of October. So you're doing all of the calculations, you include it in your sales price as you would have a VAT number from the day you decide you want to have that number.
So how long, and this is a personal question because I haven't filed for my VAT number yet. How long does it take to get the validity date? Like, I guess our product's going to be into the UK probably in like 6 weeks. Can I?
You can choose it yourself. You can even
Okay,
say,
cool. So I could apply for it today and have my validity date, whatever, next week or in a month, and that's fine?
Or right now, right in this second.
Okay, perfect.
We could, even on this call, we could decide saying it should start from now, and you would be able to start from now.
Perfect. Thank you.
So yeah, and from that validity date, then you have to do the filings, right? And this is going back from that start, right? So the VAT returns, this is, let's say, that the time you have to do all that calculations. You have to tell the government what you're owing to them, right? What you collected from all the consumers. And it's different from country to country. In the UK, it's on a quarterly basis. In Germany, it's on a monthly basis. In some other countries, it's on whatever period, right? So, this is really something, it's depending from country to country. And what you're actually doing is what I will show you in the next slide. But basically, it's like filling a document with all those numbers. You're submitting this document, and then the government tells you, okay, thank you. This is the amount you have to pay by bank transfer. Okay, and then you got about 2 weeks to make that payment. And if you don't pay within that time, they give you some penalties, and they have very strict due dates. Okay, so keep in mind, if you plan to do something like this, that you should not, you should do it in time. So that's the thing here. Let me show you how those presentations, I will skip that slide for a moment. Let me show you how those VAT returns look like. On the left, you see an UK VAT return, and on the right, you see a German one. They are a little older, but they look quite similar. Most of them are done online. Okay, so the form is just like a copy you don't really need. And as you can see here, there are a lot of different boxes. So it will not be enough to just say, my total sales amount is this, and 20% out of this is that, and that's it, So there are a lot of different numbers that need to be added here. And that's when we come to that slide. It is definitely possible to do all of that on your own. Especially the VAT registration is not something that is complex for everybody, for a normal person, right? So doing it yourself definitely works. However, I would not recommend doing it, because if you look again at this document, if you know how to fill this document, great. But probably if you have learned how to do this, you could probably apply for being an accountant yourself, right? So I guess as you should focus on your Amazon business, this is something that probably most people would love to outsource to somebody who knows how to do that, right? And probably also not to any VA they can get for a cheap price at Fiverr, because I guess this is something, if they make a mistake, it could be a problem in the future for your whole business. So doing it yourself is not what I would recommend. Amazon, as you probably have heard, Amazon is offering this service as well. So they got someone as a partner, and with this partner, they are doing the VAT returns at a quite cheap price, let's say. However, this is definitely better than doing it yourself, but it's also some kind of risky, because one of the main problems by Amazon doing it themselves means that you have to share everything with Amazon. So your import documents, which are showing who is your supplier, all of your purchase prices, every information actually you will be sharing with Amazon. And as you guys know, Amazon is definitely not always your friend. They can also be your competitor. So I'm not sure if it makes sense to share such an information with Amazon, especially because it's not the focus of Amazon being an accountant or being a tax professional. It's just a service they offer to get people registered. They don't care how they do it and if it's done correctly. They just want you to get registered to be able to sell, right? And that brings me to the third part, which is external partners. If it's an accountant, if it's a service provider like us, if it's any other kind of person who could probably do that, it would make the most sense to get someone like those person, because I think it's the same like in the US. I guess most of the sellers are having a personal accountant in the US, even though you could do it on your own. But I think that's money worth spent or well spent.
Yeah, most sellers and business owners agree with you there, including myself. Money well spent.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So yeah, let me show you one more slide regarding this. Actually, it was a question by Kim, where to get this data actually. And so even, you know, even if you're working with an accountant, you need to know, like, what am I getting, what am I passing to them, right? And actually, it's not that complex, because there is one report of Amazon out of those hundreds of reports they are having. And you find it in your Seller Central, as you can see here, if you go to Reports, Fulfillment by Amazon, and then in my screenshot on the left bottom side, you see Amazon VAT Transaction Report. And that's the report we have on that screenshot on the right. It's basically a document. It's created on a monthly basis, and it shows you all of the transactions Amazon made. Sales, returns, refunds, FC transfers, whatever. So a lot of different information. And with this information, basically, it's the basis to calculate your VAT liability in the different countries. The more countries you have, the more complex this topic is getting, even for accountants, right? So at a certain point, if you're just starting out in the UK, you could probably somehow summarize those values here. If you're doing a second country, you can forget it. Even an accountant needs a software, and you know that's why we are in business, you know, because we are offering that kind of software that is doing the collection and the calculation of VAT for all of those different countries, because there are several rules behind, like, why is this transaction belonging to the UK? Why does this transaction belong to Germany? Whatever. But basically, that's the place to find it. And even, you know, if you want to look at it sometimes on your own, I think that's a very good report you should at least take a look at once every few months.
That's great, thank you. Would you advise that a seller just download their reports each month and then save them somewhere, send them over to their accountant?
It definitely makes sense, yeah.
And they'll be available historically, right? So you'll be able to see them from all
Absolutely.
of time.
Always available from the third of a month for the last month, but
Awesome.
Also back to whatever time. I think the first you can get is sometime in 2016, because that's when they started this topic.
Right. Okay.
But
That's
actually,
great.
you know, as I said, the more VAT numbers you have, the more complex this whole topic gets. And as you have seen, you know, those are very many boxes you have to put in the numbers. So this is really an own topic, like what information to put in what box. So now importing goods to Europe. I think that's basically affecting everybody who is starting out in Europe, as most people are importing goods from outside Europe. And I think many people have heard that they have to pay import VAT when their goods are moved to Europe. And actually this is true, right? So when you're moving goods to Europe, and let's say they are worth 1,000 euros, okay? The customs will tell you saying, okay, you have to pay 200 euros, 20%, VAT, which is the import VAT. It's the same VAT as we talked about, they just call it import VAT. And actually, that's something that is affecting your cash flow, because you will be paying those 200 euros. However, this is not something you pay and you will never get back. And on top of it, you pay the other VAT you collect. It's reclaimable. So when maybe you can remind about that example we had with those 24 euros. The total VAT that is paid for that sales is 4 euros, right? And probably during the import, you paid already 2 euros. Then when you're doing your VAT return, you will just deduct the amount you already paid from the amount you collected, so that the total VAT still stays at 20% of the total sales price. So import VAT is something that is fully reclaimable and is not affecting your business. It's just affecting your cash flow for the moment, for the period the VAT return is not done.
Christoph, I'm just going to emphasize this one more time because I know this is a lot of people's like a lot of people wrote to us like, no, you also need to add in import VAT. So you're not like essentially tax the VAT 2 times. You're just, if I understand this correctly, when you import it, Europe essentially takes a deposit, requires you to pay some of it right then. And then when you file for your VAT, that's when you settle up and you either owe them more money or potentially they owe you money. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. And
Okay.
as you said, it could even be that they owe you money. So, for example, you're importing something to, let's say, Germany, okay? You're importing goods worth of 1,000 euros to Germany. You pay 200 euros to German customs, right? And let's say in this month, for whatever the reason is, you did not sell a single unit. And then when the VAT return is due for Germany for this month, they would say, what is the VAT, what is the turnover you made? 0. So VAT liable is 0 in total. What is the VAT you actually paid? 200 euros. So in total, they owe you 200 euros. And either you say, give me back my money, or you say you can keep it as a credit for next time.
Perfect. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
You're welcome. No problem. On the other hand, the duties, this is something that is not reclaimable. Those are real duties, so depending on the product, they might be at 3%, they might be at 0%, 5%, whatever it is, customs will tell you. But maybe you should keep them in mind when you're doing your calculations.
Great.
Then one last thing about the so-called IORI number, because that's also a question we have heard many times. It's a number, it's basically an ID. It's an importer's number that is linking your goods movement, your import, to your business and to your VAT number, so that the government is aware, okay, with this IORI number, if the products are moved to Europe with your IORI number, then you can deduct it from your VAT return. So please be aware that not your, let's say, Chinese freight forwarder is using his IORI number, because sometimes they offer this, because then they are the ones who can reclaim the VAT. And probably they even charge you for this. So that's very important to use your own IORI number. Applying for an IORI number is very, very simple. And there is not even a requirement like doing monthly filings or something similar. So you just apply for that number. You can go online, you can Google for applying IORI number. It's a European-wide number, so you don't even have to apply for it in any country you're moving your goods to. So you can just go online, Googling IORI UK number, and then there is an online form, you fill it, and 1 week after you got your IORI number. And that's actually the number you need to start moving your goods to Europe. So even though the validity date of the VAT number could be today, you could be starting today, you could be selling today. However, as you're not having any goods here in Europe, you would need to apply for this IORI number as a first step. Wait a week to get that number, and then you can start moving goods to Europe and start selling and actually deducting the import VAT you paid.
All right, that's really good insight. So essentially everyone listening to this, if they want to import goods to Europe, they should just register for the IORI number, right? I mean, I guess like freight forwarders will offer for them to use theirs, but there's no situation that we would want to do that, correct?
Not really, it would be, the Chinese frauders probably, they would do that.
Okay.
But we are talking about making serious business, and I think we want to make this on the long run. So getting an IORI number, it makes sense, because otherwise they would be the ones to reclaim that VAT. So you can use them if you say, I want to move it right now. I don't even want to wait that 1 week, or probably your goods are already stuck at customs, then it would make sense. But then you would not be the one to reclaim it. Probably they have to reclaim it and maybe pay it to you, but I'm not sure if they will do it.
Right. Okay. Good insight.
That's the importing topic. If your goods are in Europe, you don't need an IORI number at all. You don't need to take care of this topic at all. But I guess most of us will import from outside Europe. Yeah, now I think we are already at the last topic, the most asked questions we collected. And I think we answered a lot of questions already during that session here, but there are some things that are unanswered yet. First question, do I need a local bank account? No, because actually once you did your VAT return, the government just tells you this is the amount you have to pay, and that's our bank account you have to pay it to. And you can arrange a payment, a regular bank transfer from whatever bank account you want to use. I would always recommend using a bank account in that currency because of the fees, banking fees, but you can pay it from whatever bank account you want to pay it, okay? And actually getting a local bank account is a very complex topic, so definitely you can use your US bank account, or you can use some special providers like World First, Currencies Direct, TransferWise, or whatever their name is.
Great.
Next question, what if I did not sell any product and paid import VAT? That's a question we just answered actually. So you would be able to fully reclaim that VAT. So it could happen that the government is owing you some money on that import. But as we said, the import VAT is never something you pay. You will never, it will just affect your cash flow for that period. That's it. Then next question, what if a customer asks for an invoice? That will happen many times in Germany because German clients, you know, it's a stereotype, but here it's true. They are very, you know, they really want to get invoices. They want to know what they are doing. They want to know that you actually paid your VAT. So Amazon does not send any invoices. They send something like a payment confirmation, which looks like an invoice. For most people, it's fine, but for some, it's not, you know. And as you're responsible for collecting VAT, Amazon will not be able to send an invoice themselves, right? However, sending an invoice is a very simple thing. It's the same as you do it in the US. So if somebody is asking you to send them an invoice, you just say, if we go back to our example, 20 euros net price, 20% VAT on top, which is 24 euros gross price. And the invoice itself looks the same way as an US invoice or every other invoice looks like. And once you get those requests multiple times, I would recommend using some kind of invoicing software. There are a lot of those softwares out there you can just use to send those invoices. So
great, thanks. It was funny when you said like the stereotype. I remember like when I first started Jungle Scout, which is an American company, you know, selling software, people would like ask for the invoice with our VAT number. I was like, what the heck is this? Like, we're an American company. I don't know what a VAT number is. We don't do that, but here's an invoice.
Yeah.
But then after a few people asked, I was like, okay, like I understand now. And then we, you know, set up a better invoice.
Honestly, I have no clue what people are doing with those invoices. So I don't know. I'm not throwing all my invoices on everything I pay. But, you know, whatever, you know, but it's a requirement to provide it. So you should do it. And actually, sometimes competitors are doing this as well, because they want you to make sure that you really pay VAT. Otherwise, they try to do something against it, right? Ah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. You know, that's a way to get rid of competitors.
There you go.
Yeah, then next question. Is my product eligible for a reduced VAT rate? We didn't talk about that much because I always said VAT is about 20%, but there are reduced rates, especially for food products, even for supplements, sometimes medical products, like everything that is somehow a little special, let's say, might be eligible for a reduced or even a 0% VAT rate. You can do a research on your own, just by searching for that product, even looking at maybe some competitors' websites, not on Amazon, but some websites that they show you the VAT amount they are charging on that. Or you can ask an accountant, you know, this is what our daily business is. You can ask us saying, okay, can you make a VAT checkup for my product? And we will just, you know, one of our accountants, they will do a checkup. They will look at the books, you know, seeing, okay, making sure if this product would be eligible for a lower VAT rate. And that could really make a big difference, because paying 20% VAT or probably 7% VAT or 10% VAT or 0% VAT really makes a big difference. So that's something I would always recommend if you're unsure about your VAT rate. If you're selling something like, you know, the jungle sticks, you know, I'm quite sure that they will be at the regular 20% VAT rate. But everything that goes into those food, medical, whatever kind of category, that's something that could go to a reduced rate.
Christoph, I have a question about that. So obviously you want to know what rates you're paying for your profit calculations, but will Amazon, so when you list your product on Amazon, will they automatically collect the right amount depending on what your product is?
No, not at all. So as I said before at the beginning, the price you're adding in Seller Central is the price VAT inclusive. Amazon doesn't care if this price is at 20% rate, 10% rate, 0% rate, whatever it is, Amazon just says this is the VAT inclusive price. And the consumer knows that this is the VAT inclusive price because that's the way it is in Europe on every website, on every shop. And you will be responsible yourself to pay the right amount. So therefore, it's your responsibility to make a checkup yourself to make sure that probably you're at this lower rate. And we know when you're selling something for 24 euros, you actually maybe only have to pay 2 euros, 10% or 0.
Okay.
So in the reports that you showed us that you download from Seller Central, will they show that you always collected, like, say 20%, and then it's your responsibility to...
Not even this. They just show you a column that says sales price.
Right.
And they say, okay, that's what the customer paid. Maybe they used a coupon code or whatever, but the price the customer really paid. So let's say the price where Amazon is getting their commission from, that's the price you have to then use and make it a net price and making the VAT price out of it,
Right, okay. So you need to know what percentage your products are. Yeah, okay.
So when you say make it a net price, so like if I sell my product for $20, Amazon takes $5 worth of fees out of that. Do I just have to pay the 20% VAT on that 15?
No.
Or the whole 20, including Amazon's commission?
On the whole 20. So if you got this this report and you see the product was sold for 20 euros and you want to know, okay, what is the VAT I'm paying from this, you have to divide it by 1.2. And then you get the net amount, and the difference is the VAT you're paying to the government.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's the way it's calculated. And that brings us to our last question. What is the risk of not being VAT registered, not paying VAT at all? That's something I would never recommend because, sure, I cannot recommend this, but it's definitely not worth doing it. Because I think everybody here is planning to build a long-term business here. There is a lot of VAT fraud going on, so very, let's say, unfair competition in a way. But the governments and Amazon themselves, they tried a lot already to prevent their sellers from this unfair competition. And they are now really forcing people. And even the government, they have access to Amazon accounts. So they will be knowing it if you pay VAT or if you're VAT registered. And, honestly, not being VAT registered, it's a question like asking in the US, like, what if I'm not paying my taxes, right? You can do it, and maybe for a few months or a few years, probably it will work, but at the end, it will not, And if you ever want to go to Europe, visiting Paris, Rome, or whatever city, I think it would be great if you can go there, you can go to the airport without getting caught.
For sure.
As a worst case scenario, let's say.
Right. We want to encourage everyone to create legitimate businesses, right? So
I think so too, yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's it from my side.
All right. Kim, you want to tell everyone about their homework?
Yep. So so this week's homework sheet just has some links and resources that you can use to cover all of the things that Christoph has spoken about today. So your homework here is going to be to figure out how to set up your business. I realize there's lots of people joining from the US, from Europe, from the UK. So, using the advice we've had today, figure out the best route for you. and get VAT registered. We want to create a legitimate business, like we've just said. So start that process now, and also, and then sign up for a Seller Central account as well if you haven't already, in the country that you're going to sell in, or a European Seller Central account. And so that's your homework for this week.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Kim. Christoph, we have a few minutes left here. We're a little bit under the hour. Do you mind if I ask you a few more questions?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. So let's just try to I just want to think big picture here, what do we need to know, as Amazon sellers? Most people watching this, they want to just get started selling in Amazon. So I'm thinking, okay. So let's think about a few different scenarios here that I think would cover the majority of our audience. So one would be our scenario. So we want to know this. I have a U.S. LLC, so that's an incorporation in the U.S. I have a U.S. bank account. We're planning on shipping, just to get started, to keep it simple, we're just going to ship to the U.K. So before we ship to the UK, we need to register for a UK VAT number with the effective date or whatever that was called before it arrives in the UK. At which point we're going to sell it in the UK. And then, so when it arrives in the UK, we're going to have to pay some VAT right then on the value of those goods. But that's a deposit. The UK, the Queen's going to hold on to this money for me. And then after selling in a few months or whatever, I have to file a VAT return, at which point I settle up with the Queen, right? So, the UK government, I already gave them £500. I owe £600, so I'm going to have to give them £100 extra. Is everything there correct?
Absolutely correct. The only thing you forgot about is the IORI number. So
the IORI number, okay.
A VAT number, you should also apply for an IORI number. Otherwise, your products will get stuck at customs and you will not be able to make that deposit. Or let's say the Queen wouldn't be able to link the deposit to your company, right? And she could probably do it.
All right, great. So then I'm still storing my goods in the UK. I decide I want to start selling in the German marketplace as well, which is fine. And then I don't have to register a VAT number in Germany until I've hit 100,000 euros. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And that's not free. I would just be paying that to the UK government instead of the German government. Is that correct? Okay, sweet. All right. So what about anyone watching? So I think I understand all that. It makes perfect sense. So thanks a lot for explaining that well. For anyone watching, let's say, I imagine some people watching, they probably live in the EU. Maybe they have a EU corporation, an EU bank account. Could you just give us the quick rundown, like that same kind of summary for someone like that?
Sure. So whenever let's say you're a UK business yourself, probably you know how to deal with VAT in the UK. Probably you got an accountant who is doing your UK VAT, but probably you're thinking about expanding to another country, either by doing pan-EU or probably you just skip the threshold limit, which would be great, right? You would make 100,000 euros in Germany to German customers. So the German government would now say, get registered in Germany. That's what we want. We want the money in our pocket, not in the Queen's pocket. So from that moment on, it's kind of the same situation as we talked before. There are again those two basic rules to get a VAT number in that other foreign country, either by founding a company, so it would be a subsidiary of your UK company in Germany, but then you would have to do everything the same. You would have to pay German taxes, and you don't want to pay German taxes. You have to do a lot of bookkeeping and all of that stuff as a regular business, as your second business. Or you again, you apply for a number which will be represented by somebody, right? Or you apply for it yourself, but you apply for it with your UK business. So the rules are basically the same, but it's just a question of either I found a new business or I just represent my business from the UK in Germany, which is actually the way to go, right? And then the only thing you have to remind, and then it gets a little more complex, is like the question, when I'm making a sale, let's say from a UK warehouse to a German customer, where do I have to pay VAT? And when I make a sale from a German customer to from a German warehouse to a UK warehouse, but it's B2B, it's not B2C. Where do I have to pay my VAT? And that's the time when an accountant, probably a local accountant, gets stuck because that's not their business. They know about their home country, but they don't know about the European VAT and all of that movements and all of that stuff, you know? And the more countries you have, the more complex it gets. And the more you probably will need an expert or a software or whatever, you know, to deal with all those movement and transactions.
Cool. Okay. Thank you very much.
What about if you are just starting out and you don't have a company founded anywhere in the world? Like, can you still register for VAT as an individual?
You can register as a sole trader, which is also a way of being a business. You cannot register as an individual, because an individual is always the one who pays VAT. You know, everybody of us is an individual as well. And when when I go shopping, right, I also have to pay VAT and I cannot reclaim that. So as an individual, I would always recommend founding a company because that's the requirement. And then you could probably say, maybe I'm deciding to found that company directly in that country of storage, because otherwise you would need 2 VAT numbers, or you would need another business somewhere in the world and this fiscal agent.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that would be another good point. That might be a question people have, would be like, okay, let's say I live in America or Canada or Australia or whatever. I don't have any incorporations so far. Let's say I only plan on selling in the EU for the foreseeable future. Would you recommend I incorporate in my local home country, or like in the UK or one of the EU countries?
Probably, you know, that's not really my topic, but probably.
Right. I'm asking you all kinds of stuff.
No, sure. It's fine. You know, I think I would still recommend doing it in your home country, you know, because
it's probably easier for most people, right? Like,
exactly, you know, it's maybe even if there is no language difference, if you would found it in the UK, but you know, it's your company, you know, you can use your home address for making your business, right? So I think it's just easier, you know. And getting a VAT number, you know, in the UK or in whatever countries, and doing that filings, you know, it costs some money to get it done by an accountant or by some external people, right? But it's not that much of a money, right? You have to see this as part of your business costs, you know, as part of your overall costs, right? And you know, if you're not even making that money, I guess probably you shouldn't start there, right?
Yeah.
So. And you can always deregister as well. You know, it's not something you are bound for the next 10 years, right?
Right. Okay, cool. All right. Man, this doesn't seem that complicated when you explain it, Christoph. Everything else we're reading, we're like, holy crap, what is all this stuff? I know our audience is so confused about this, but when you explain, it's like, okay, that's not that hard. Like, we already have a US, you know, LLC that we're going to use. We're just going to register for VAT, register for our ORI. We're going to have to pay a little bit of deposit when we import our goods. After that, we file once in a quarter. We're just going to hire someone like you because I don't like doing stuff like that. And then that's it. Easy peasy.
Exactly.
All right. So I told you weren't allowed to pitch your product, but we got so much value from this presentation. Why don't you just tell us a little bit more about FBA Hero and like the services you provide for sellers?
Okay. So FBA Hero basically is doing exactly what we just talked about, you know. We are the VA you outsource it to. So what we are doing actually is we build a network of local accountants in all of those countries. Plus we have something like a bookkeeping accountancy software. You can connect to your Seller Central account. And then we automatically grab all that data and move it to the different accountants in those countries, and they will be doing the VAT returns. So with us, it's very simple to grow, especially if you are bigger already or if you plan to get bigger, as you don't have to move all the time. You just say, hey, Chris, I just skipped the threshold limit to Austria, or even I'm telling you because you can monitor it in your dashboard, right? And then you just register in Austria, right? So we are doing the registration part for IORI and VAT numbers, as well as the whole filing part and calculation part. We will be very soon doing invoices as well. So probably in the near future, if someone is asking you for an invoice, you just go online, you go to our dashboard, you go to our transactions, you click on that invoice, click send, and it's sent to the customers, or you automate it, right?
Nice. Okay.
So you can compare us a little to Techstar in the US.
Right. Cool.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions?
No, I think
This is really good.
I feel really
Yeah.
educated. Thank you.
Yeah, we feel good. So thank you very much for coming on, Christoph. Guys, anyone watch this, if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, you need to do it. It's right below. If you're enjoying the $1 Million Case Study, which you have to be by now, then you need to subscribe. Christoph, thanks again. I hope you have a nice rest of the day. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.